Okay, little sad story for you. A little boy in America, and it's always America, yes, because they speak my language. I can read their writing. I can hear them and understand. If it was Russia, I wouldn't understand. So I'm sure this goes on all over the world, but forgive me, it's always somewhere that I can understand their language. A little boy ran from the back of his house, front of his house in a rural part of America, round to the back. Never made it round the back, and search parties were called out for 5 weeks. They searched everywhere, and then one day the little boy was found on a place that they'd searched hundreds of times before. Unfortunately, the little boy had passed. So really strange how that happened, sniffer dogs and everything. But my biggest fear is, imagine a planet that has elite people that pretty much rule everything, and they choose who they want to die. Instead of maybe it's overpopulation, and instead of saying, hey, everyone stop, they choose. Why should they get to choose? That's my biggest fear. Oh, I hate silly people. I really hate silly people. Okay, so one person said that the crystal skull that was found in the tomb in around 1920 something, 1926, was planted there by the Smithsonian. First of all, they wouldn't bother doing that because that kind of then makes it feel like there should be more paranormal going on. So the Smithsonian, if you know who they are and who runs them, etc., you know that the last thing they want you to believe is paranormal stuff. So let's look at the facts, because people just defy belief. They really do. Okay, so there's no denying that 1926, this guy actually went into a tomb, unopened tomb, no denying that, and found and brought out a crystal skull. Now, the indigenous people that were all standing around that allowed him to go into this tomb, they all have heard of the story of the skull. So now, if the guy here, Mitchell Hedges, went there, pretended that he didn't have a skull, and took it down with him and then brought it back up to say, hey, look what I found, he would have had to have known about the Aztecs and the skull prior to going there. And bearing in mind, this was before the internet, so he would have had to have, the logistics of that, he would have had to have found the tribe prior to going there, found someone that could create such an intricate piece of artwork, such as the crystal skull, and then hope that no one else around the world replicates the crystal skull, because he would have been the only person doing it. But funny enough, there's 13 other ones. So you got to remember, this was before the internet. So local newspapers probably might have covered it, but that's probably as far as you're going to go. And now there's scratches on it, as I mentioned in one of the other videos. And the Smithsonian says it's fake because, wait for it, it's got marks on it. Tool marks. No, they're not tool marks, they're scratches. They can't identify what tools did it, so therefore they're scratches. And they just says there's sort of marks. And they show them. I've seen videos of the, going in microscopic, and there's just tiny little hairline sort of mark there. And clearly a scratch. The thing's probably thousands of years old, and they can't carbon date it either, because crystal you can't carbon date. So no one knows how old these things are. So please, enough with the it's been debunked. It hasn't been debunked. It's the Smithsonian saying it's been debunked because that's what they do. You got to have research before you can start saying things are debunked. So anyway, yeah, that's a genuine skull that has mysterious properties. Great Scott, Marty, let's talk about time travel. And I know so many of you are desperate to get to this particular part. So time travel, let's connect that with the spirits that I've talked about. So there's a guy called Randy Kramer. Now, he's not the only one. There's a few others. And apparently he's worked for the Earth Defense System. So this might actually go over a couple of videos, so bear with me. So he apparently, prior to being born, he had, as a fetus, he was injected and manipulated and probably even put in his mum's womb by the military. And apparently, some of the DNA that they was mixing with his were alien DNA in order to make him a better soldier. So that when he grew up, they would sort of railroad him into the military. So that he ended up in the Earth Defense Force. Is time travel possible? Well, Randy Kramer, who worked apparently for the Earth Defense Force, says it is, and he was part of the Naval Space Command, which is a real thing actually. Apparently it's new, but we know it's not new. Now this is actually, I believe, the same setup that Gary McKinnon had found when he was hacking computers. He actually found the names of these craft, etc., and one of them is Highliner, which is that craft there. It's a mile-long spacecraft. So if you're adding everything together now, where all my videos, you start seeing there's a pattern here. So the Naval Space Command is in charge of that. Now, once they've finished with you on your tour of duty, now in this case, the guy Randy Kramer says he did about 17 years there on Mars. So on Mars, Randy Kramer says that there's 6 to 7 million people, including aliens, on there, all working away. Now, as I say, Randy Kramer's not the only person that said this. Now, when he's done with his tour, which he says was 17 years, he then was taken to a laboratory on Mars, and they took his spirit, his soul, from yeah, you guessed it, from the head, which is, if you've watched my other videos, connected to the pineal gland, and they take his soul, which or spirit, whatever you want to call it, same thing. He sort of says, he doesn't really know what to call it, and then they transferred it into a cloned body of his, which was 17 years younger. So he's done the tour for 17 years, and then they suppress his memory while in this new cloned younger body, and they send him back in time